In part 3 of this income protection roundtable, our panel reflects on whether the launch of this new round of IP products actually represents an opportunity for the re-emergence of the risk specialist or risk-focused advisor, and we hope this gives you food for thought. Throwing it open to anyone, I'll just give you the results of our latest in-depth, very accurate survey that Riskinfo runs, and we have no control over who votes. But that said, we ran a poll earlier in October. The question was, the nature of the new range of IP products will make for more challenging conversations with my clients. Agree, disagree, too early to tell. And when the poll closed, 72%, so the strong majority of advisors, and there will have been others other than advisors that would have voted, but the general mood of the meeting from our experience is that's pretty close to being accurate. Advisors think this new round of products will make conversations more challenging. Now, do you think, and I'll throw it open to anybody, do you think that's because there's at the moment a lack of understanding, a lack of clarity on the new products because they've just been introduced, or do you think they can see the writing on the wall and it will be more difficult from here on in?
I'll take that one. I would say that it's multifaceted. I think we've got a huge amount of information that's come because it's all the insurers changing their details at once. So if you need to know your product, that's a commitment to come up to speed, especially now that these products are more complex, and understanding the implications and training your teams and everybody involved in the advice process along the way. We know that existing products are going to go up in price, or that's the expectation anyway, and there are these new sustainable products, and there's going to be those challenging conversations with clients as things become less affordable and people are concerned about their best interest duty requirements. Now, this is just one issue that's happening on the backdrop of all the other regulatory reform fatigue that we've been seeing over the past 12 to 24 months. And there are quite a few people just saying, look, this is one element that is simply now become too hard. So I'm seeing conversations with advisors who are now saying, I am no longer going to provide risk advice because I don't think I can do it competently for my client. So they're stepping away from it. So there are many, many challenges happening in that space for multiple reasons.
Do you see that as sorry to interrupt, do you see that as an opportunity for risk advisors? Because I do, seeing that it's more challenging to write risk, I think it may be the resurgence of the risk specialists again.
Absolutely. I love being a risk specialist, and I wouldn't change that at all. So a lot of the comments when LIF was first coming out was saying that would be the death of the risk specialist. But the way I see it is, if you want to focus on risk, you really do need to specialize and be efficient in every area of your practice. So I see it as the rise of the specialist, but we may have less of them, at least for some time.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've segued nicely into the opportunity thing that I was talking about earlier without me even having to raise it again. So let's go, Andrew, to you to see what your views are on that. And then again, I'll throw it over to everyone. And then I'm going to come to you, Phil, to give some context with regard to this conversation today and how it fits in with all the other regulatory reforms that have been taking place recently and what you've very beautifully called Red October. But before we do, we'll just go over to Andrew. Is this an opportunity, Andrew, for the re-emergence of a risk specialist?
Yeah, look, I mean, maybe. I mean, I sort of think the pool of people that need insurance advice probably hasn't changed. The fact that we've got a new product to deal with, I don't think per se gives us an opportunity. It's more around, does this new product mean it's pushed risk advice into a more complicated area, and some people that were on the fringes of giving risk advice,
that's right, that's
self-select
exactly
out. Yeah.
So the journalists won't want to go down that path anymore.
I think I don't know the answer to that, to be honest, and it's pretty early days, but probably at a headline level, I would think that the answer to that is probably yes. But I think maybe balanced against that as well is the difficulty that a lot of risk specialists have in pricing their advice. Maybe things are starting to change, but I know historically people that have relied on commissions effectively means they're price takers. Those commissions have obviously reduced substantially. So now you're sort of expected to do more with less. I don't think that's really going to add up. The advice practices need to be sustainable and profitable in the same way that the insurance companies need to be sustainable and profitable. But if you want to charge a fee for giving advice, and it's complicated and it's very beneficial for the client to get the right result. But if the person down the road is not charging a fee, that can be a bit of an issue. So the whole advice industry needs to get a little bit on the same foot on this one as well.
All right, we'll have to call you on that and come back to you and Catherine now just to talk to you about current commercial viability of risk advice practices. So I'll do that, and then Eugene and Leah, I'll come to you with your view as to whether or not the new round of IP products does present an opportunity for the re-emergence of risk specialists, and then I'll come to you, Phil, after that. All right. Okay. So Andrew and Catherine, is the way things are right now, are your risk advice practices commercially viable?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, I think part of the reason for that is, we had a long history in risk advice and we know what we're doing. We moved some time ago to more of a hybrid, even a level commission structure, which obviously gives us a nice baseline of regular income coming into the business. And, we are in a position, because of some of the clients we're dealing with, to charge upfront fees for the preparation of risk advice as well. And I think that's really a necessary thing to do now, given the...
What type of clients, Andrew?
Sorry?
What type of clients are you charging upfront fee?
Well, look, if they're coming to us for comprehensive advice that is including risk advice, we'll package obviously the cost of the risk advice up to the upfront fee, and that, depending on the complexity of the arrangement of the client, can be $5,000 up to sort of $15,000. For standalone risk advice, we haven't been charging anywhere near those sort of levels, and it's probably been a little bit more just on a cost recovery kind of basis, just to make sure that if we go through all this effort and find out that they had a health problem we were unaware of, that they couldn't get accepted, or they didn't want to accept the loading, we weren't too badly out of pocket.
Okay,
thanks, Andrew. Catherine?
So my focus in the years before LIF was to move to a hybrid model. My lapse rate is incredibly low on my client book, so it made sense to me to aim for the higher ongoing trail aspect, to ensure it gave me the ability to service my clients and have the teams in place. Beyond that, I also have a hybrid approach. I receive the brokerage in the form of a commission, but I also charge a couple of small fees amounting to a few $100s along the way as part of my meetings, and never from a need to commercially, but more just to get buy-in from the client and the process. The other elements have been every area of efficiency that I can invest time in, where I find it's going to work, I've made sure to take advantage of those over a number of years, and just those little 1%ers adding on, and that works quite well for me.
So a combination of things, Catherine, including the fact that with this hybrid model of 20% renewal, that effectively increases the value of your business on an ongoing basis because of the higher renewals.
Absolutely. And I think any fee model obviously needs to be a workable option. And gosh, some people are more complicated than others. And that's why I think it's really important to invest, education aspect of your client, setting expectations, so they're not pulling out of the process because there's an objection that pops up that could have been addressed earlier in the piece. That comes from expectations around pricing, pre-assessments, understanding the health before you start making recommendations. There's a lot of factors that need to be addressed to ensure that you get a high conversion rate, and that every client that you're seeing does, as many as possible, become customers.
Understood. Thank you very much. And so going back to Eugene and Leah, your take on the notion that this new round of IP products launched into the market may be an opportunity for the re-emergence of risk specialists.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and I'd agree with everything that's been said so far. I think there's two ways that can probably go, and it's risk-only practices or risk-focused practices, but also one way we see it works really well is having a risk specialist advisor within a larger practice. So the one advisor might handle the investment side of things, and then you have another advisor come in and talk about the risk piece, and they work together with that client. As far as pricing goes, they'd probably be able to give you more detail than that, but also it's an opportunity for paraplanners. I think there's a term that's been thrown around more recently is a technical paraplanner. So paraplanners choosing to specialize in certain areas. So if you have a client that's looking for risk advice that's slightly out of your wheelhouse or a bit different to your ideal client, you can lean more heavily on those technical paraplanners to fill in the gaps. And that's an opportunity for us there, but also for advisors, rather than having to turn away clients that don't fit their ideal client box if they're just slightly out of it, or it's a referral, whatever it might be. Just the peace of mind knowing that you've got resources there, and you're still definitely serving the client's best interest. So that's a real opportunity there.
Right. So your business has existed for about 4 years, I think, Leah.
Yeah.
Is that right? So who are you and your team doing statements of advice for? Are you doing SOAs for generalist advisors who may have some detailed knowledge gaps when it comes to the life insurance part of the proposition? Or are you serving risk specialists who are just outsourcing for efficiency purposes? What's the combination of that, and what are the trends?
Yeah, we have a good mix of advisors. We're lucky enough to be in a position now where we're selecting the advisors that we work with a little bit more. And so the advisors we're looking to work with, we have more of a technical input. So we work together as a team to get to the best interest due there. They're obviously, it's their name on the document, so they've got still full control of the strategy, but we tweak it and add input where we think there's value. As far as risk goes, we have some risk specialists still on our book, and some that are emerging are younger advisors that are seeing the opportunity there. Younger advisors tend to have younger clients, and they often need more risk advice. So they've got more debt and things like that. So certainly seeing plenty of risk still, and certainly within our team, we're making an active effort to stay across the new products, making sure we're adding value and talking to BDMs who are much more willing to speak to outsourcers than they have been in the past, which is fantastic. It makes our lives easier, and getting hold of those resources that we can share with our advisors. So there's great SOA wording guides from a lot of the product providers and things like that just are going to make their jobs a little bit easier and frame those conversations with clients a little bit better. We're obviously a bit removed from that. So logically, I can say, these are the features you've got and these are what you're going to lose. Are you willing to do that? But the advisor has to have that relationship with the client. So we fill in the technical aspect, and they're the relationship managers really with their clients, and they know their clients best. So they have input on whether what we're suggesting is going to work.
Okay, but the door's open for greater volumes of levels of risk specialist advice?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And your take on that, Eugene? Many advisors in the Lifespan network focus on risk. What's your take on the future?
Yeah, we've got risk specialists. We've got a lot of holistic advisors. I've found over the last few years, particularly since LIF has come in, a lot of advisors that would do risk as a probably not their specialty, but part of a holistic process have ceased doing risk. I've even found a few risk specialists, pretty good risk specialists, not just within Lifespan, but from advisors I speak to outside of Lifespan, stop doing risk and focus on their investment and superannuation business, just because underwriting's become hard. It really depends on the type of clients that you generally cater to. So I reckon it's a huge opportunity for risk specialists, because a lot of these advisors I speak of, they need to then align themselves with a risk specialist, because particularly if they've done risk advice in the past, they will recognize that it probably is the foundation of a comprehensive advice process for people up to a certain age, I would say. So it's definitely an opportunity, but there are a lot of problems with this, because talk about sustainability of both the life insurance industry and the advice industry. A lot of the people that are now not getting advice on insurance are the younger people, because their premiums are lower. And I can't help but think that would be having an impact on the types of insurance that's being bought, and premium pools and claim payout ratios. And I just wonder if that is playing a part in this whole sustainability of, and profitability of being an insurer. Something else to throw in there in terms of sustainability: interest rates. Zero interest rates for the last, I don't know how many years, would also be killing insurers, particularly in Australia, where the regulations around how they can invest are a lot tighter. There's a lot of dimensions to that. In terms of sustainability of of advice around insurance. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the industry is going to go down the path of fee for service to a certain extent, because a lot of the time it's not viable. And I think all fee for service arrangements in any industry really narrows the field of potential clients. The fact that there's many less advisors probably means the imbalance is in favour of advisors, but it just means that people are going to buy insurance, I think, particularly via advice.
Right. There was a lot there, Eugene. I don't know where to start with that. But you talk about so many layers of complexity or difficulty that relates to ultimately delivering a valuable service that's affordable to a client, to a consumer. You talked about opportunity, but it seems like the door's open, but you've got to walk through it. You've talked about, Catherine and Andrew have mentioned opportunity, so have you, but you've also reflected on the fact that risk specialists are walking away from being, before 1 October, walked away from being risk specialists to more generalist advisors because it has been too complex and too challenging. Do you think the environment exists where that can actually, yes, there's opportunity, but will they walk through that door in the future, given the comments you made about complexities and difficulties?
Yes. Oh, look, wherever you've got problems like this creates opportunity, because, if there's demand and if there's a need, that's an opportunity, particularly if there's and the number of advisors meeting that demand, I think has fallen off a cliff and will continue to fall. So yeah, there's definitely an opportunity, but it is difficult. I think it's even more difficult for new entrants coming in, although the new entrants coming in have the opportunity to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch. But it's really hard. There's no one coming through. Like, you count the number of planners on 2 hands that come through every month. So you'll be waiting a while. And if there are further changes to commission structures, in terms of abolishing them and whatnot, that's probably only going to exacerbate it further. I think what you're going to see is a lot more direct to market promotion of insurance products, which I got lots of question marks about. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the advice community, for those who want to step up to it. But I think it's very problematic for the Australian community.
All right, so it's an opportunity that has to be, in one sense, proactively grasped by advisors to identify, as Catherine and Andrew and you have identified, that there are opportunities, but as I said, the advisor still has to walk through that door to grasp it. So finally getting to you, Phil, it's taken a while to come back to you to put this conversation in the context of everything else that's going on. And as I talked about earlier, your eloquent representation of Red October in terms of I think you have referred to it in your writings as one of the biggest round of regulatory reforms to hit the advisor market. Given what's happened in the last 10 years, that's a big comment, but new breach reporting regime, mandatory reference checking, APRA's IP intervention, design and distribution obligations, internal dispute resolution regimes, target market determinations. Where does the new IP range and initiatives fit in the context of everything else that's going on with advisors at the moment?
Yeah, there's a lot that's been happening. And Peter, I guess we'd probably go back to the discussion we've already been having about the difference between risk specialists versus generalists. You imagine how difficult it is for generalists who do a bit of risk, who have needed to come to terms with the unfair contract terms changes back in April. They also had annual renewal from July. And then in October, we've got this Red October where they're impacted. Obviously, design and distribution obligation stands out as a big change, just as the IDII reforms do. And both of those are now, they're present, they're real, they're things that advisors need to come to terms with. The breach reporting is something that most advisors hopefully will not get drawn into and won't need to worry about. That's more of a licensee's issue until it goes wrong, and then it will impact individual advisors. Mandatory reference checking, well, if they're not looking to move, then it's not really an issue for them. The IDR changes, the internal dispute resolution changes, just means that licensees are going to need to respond more quickly, because you've got 30 days to provide a final response as opposed to 45 days. And you're looking at recording more complaints than you probably ever did before, because of things that are through social media, and the fact that you've got to record on your register even matters that are resolved within the first 5 days. So that will impact an advisor in what they do, but hopefully they're not seeing too many complaints. So we come back to the big changes in October really are DDO, and advisors have the requirement to, and ASIC have been quite explicit about this, that they need to understand the target market determinations. But anyone who's been looking at target market determinations, particularly in the risk space, is going, well, all right, which clients are excluded from being suitable for these products? And there are very, very few circumstances when it's evident, but you've still got the obligation to understand what the target market determination says. What are the reporting requirements? What's a significant dealing? All of these are added responsibilities that make it more complex, make it more costly, and at the end of the day, add to the risk of running an advice practice. So yes, it is. It has been a big year of reform. It's a big period of reform. We've got more to come. We've got the single disciplinary body next year. We've got compensation scheme of last resort. And it's a very complex world that advisors live in, but it's important that they are prioritising what they need to understand, and they are then focusing on it in the context that they've got all these other things that they have to deal with, like the exam and the education standard. So I think everyone's conscious of how much pressure it's put on advisors at this time.
In the fourth and final part of this income protection roundtable, our panel will be reflecting on whether their glass is half full or half empty when it comes to the future prospects for retail life insurance advice. And we hope you'll join us for that conversation.